This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And this episode sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide understand the need to accelerate its growth now. Plus, traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way. IQ Audience Plus is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers media companies to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income now with IQ Audience Plus. Visit townnews.com EP today to learn more. And howdy once again, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P. If you are listening to the audio version of E&P Reports on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or whatever podcast directory or channel you prefer, please follow or subscribe to us. If you're watching the video version on YouTube, the bottom of your screen has a subscribe button. To the right is a bell. Hit that puppy and we'll update you each and every time we upload a new episode. Juneteenth. There's a name that came very, very quickly to light in our culture, now a national holiday. And it brought the city of Galveston to light as well. The city where actually slavery finally ended in the United States of America. We have the privilege today of traveling to Galveston and chatting with the publisher and the editor of the Daily News in Galveston about how they covered this holiday over the decades. This is a publication almost 200 years old that has been the chronicle of this locally celebrated holiday that has now become a national holiday. They even brought back their 150-year-old beautiful publication that talked the history of the town and Juneteenth. So with your permission, let's talk Juneteenth in Galveston with Michael Smith, the editor of the Daily News, and our friend Leonard Woolsey, the publisher. Leonard, Michael, we are now in Galveston. I am in Galveston, Texas, right, gentlemen? I mean,
yes, sir.
You're not fooling me now. You're not in Finland or something right now, correct?
No. Welcome to Galveston Island, Texas.
Oh, that is. Leonard, I was speaking to someone who worked with you for years, and everybody has an image. Last time you and I had a drink together was the last big mega conference in Fort Worth. I've known you for many years, sir.
Yeah.
Remember Sammy Papert? You could always tell at a conference. He always came in with the Hawaiian shirt, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The hair. Okay, I got to bring this up. I mean, I asked. By the way, and first of all, I have to apologize. This is a vodcast. 3/4 of our audience are on Spotify right now. 3/4 of our audience are on Stitcher and they're Apple Podcasts. There's only a quarter is watching us on YouTube. So I'm going to put your picture up. Leonard's hair, you see it from about a mile away. And I asked why. You're a skateboarder. Is that correct, sir?
That's true. I wasted my teens away as a competitive skateboarder.
Yeah. You won things skateboarding, right? Did you do the loopy things and all the other stuff? And
yes, sir. Matter of fact, a month ago, I was in Southern California skating in a skate park in Venice, California, just to skate it, like an giant empty swimming pool.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the hair is part of the skateboard world in a way, right? It's kind of like a signature. See, now, Michael, you're obviously editor-in-chief. We've been ignoring you. Is there any secrets we need to know about you, sir? I mean, are you a Tiddlywinks champion? Are you great at pool? Do you go into bars and do you are you a shark? What do you do? Is there any? I just don't want you to feel left out.
Well, I'm a newspaper editor, so mostly I work. I mean, that's what newspaper editors do. But when I'm not working, I like to hike. Spend a lot of time in Big Bend. Really, no secrets that I'm going to disclose anyway.
While you were in Big Bend, did you go to Marfa and stop by the newspaper there and have a brew and we interviewed the gentleman that
Max.
Max.
Max. Yep.
By the way, again, that's an E&P Reports. Go to editorandpublisher.com/vodcasts. Check out the Marfa paper next to Big Ben, where you can get a shot and a beer and a paper in the lobby. I think that's just wonderful. Yeah. But let's talk about Galveston, and let's get serious right now. There's some history with Galveston, and the history obviously was Juneteenth, right? And why don't you give me, Leonard, first a little background about the town and being the president. Okay, first of all, you're president of Southern Newspapers, which means it's a larger footprint than just Galveston, but you're in Galveston and you manage that newspaper, correct, sir?
That's true. We have 11 newspapers, 10 in Texas and 1 in Oklahoma and Lawton. And most of our newspapers, well, all of our newspapers are community newspapers. And our primary focus is to create a strong editorial product that the rest of our business is built around, rather than the opposite. You know, we still believe that being relevant to our communities and delivering the news that they want is our unique selling proposition. You know, that's God what forbid. Drives this place. Yeah. Michael does a fantastic job of this. He puts together a great team, and Michael was being modest earlier. I've seen him deal with hurricanes and natural disasters, and he is the coolest man under fire you will ever see, Mike.
Michael, how large is your team in Galveston? How big of a newsroom are you managing, sir?
There's about a dozen people in the newsroom. We've got right now we've got 2 reporters, but a new one starts on Monday, and we've got a slot for another one. We got 2 really good photographers, which is probably a little unusual, but we put a lot of stock in high quality photography. For one reason, our photo staff also works on our glossy magazine, and you've got to have top shelf photography in that. So we're blessed in the newspaper to have a good reason to hang on to really skilled photographers. And I think it makes our paper better. And we've got 3 people on the design desk who are kind of jacks of all trades, and a community news editor, and my managing editor, who also is the editor of Coast. I mean, she's got 2 full-time jobs probably, and does an excellent job on all of that. So there's about a dozen people in the newsroom.
All right, just many people may not know this. Quickly, circulation, Leonard. What is the circ of the newspaper, if I may ask?
We have about a 35,000 audience of print, which is about a 15 circulation paid.
How many days a week do you print?
We now publish 5 days a week. When COVID occurred a year ago in March, when the clouds were on the horizon, Mike, we made the decision to act quickly, and we changed all the pub cycles on our papers by April of 2020. And, the idea was to get through the tunnel of COVID, get out on the other side, and then we'll figure it out. So all of our properties, we no longer have 7-day-a-week print products, but Michael and his team manage a 7-day-a-week news cycle, and they're posting content 7 days a week as it's happening. So on the days that we're dark in print, he's also got a live budget working, and he manages that, and he does a great job with it.
Michael, you have a replica version as well as a website, I assume, so people can flip through the paper. Do you still publish on the non-print days a print version that just doesn't hit the press, is my question. Yes, no?
No, we don't do that on the non-print days, but we have an e-edition that's a PDF flip book on the days that
days of print. It's funny, when I was interviewing Bruce Fallman from the Tampa Bay, I live in Tampa Bay Times, owned by Pointer, now publishes 2 days a week off the press. But sees, and I'm not giving, you guys are smarter than me, I'm just telling you, they do a flip book every day, and they get a massive audience to it because people are comfortable on their tablets, flipping the pages. So I found that fascinating. And then you talk about Walter Hussman, right, over in Arkansas, and he's taught people, given free iPads. I just thought.
Yes, he did.
But so 5 days a week, you publish the print version. There is a flip version there. You also have a website. Final question would be, or many questions I have to ask you, but lockdown completely, metered. What is your theory on what we call audience revenue today, Michael? What are you doing?
Generally speaking, we're behind a paywall, but we push a lot of content out free. I mean, just starting with anything that has any kind of public health and safety aspect. You know, a lot of basically everything that we covered about COVID-19 went out free. Anything about, the police working a crime scene or something like that, all of that kind of stuff goes out free. And then we push other things out free. All of our guest commentary goes out free, but the enterprise, mostly what we put premium on is our own enterprise reporting. That's generally always behind the wall.
Excellent.
Mike, the theory has been that Michael has developed and we've developed here is that if it is somewhat commodity news, like, we're about 40 minutes from Houston, if it's the same news that Houston's running or somebody else is going to be running, there's a time to put that out there for free. And all the COVID information, by the way, somewhat related to COVID in any way, we put out in front of the wall. And we even had our local hospital sponsor that, but that was one of those things we considered public service. But if it is absolutely unique to our community, and it's the reporting that only Michael's staff can do, that's behind the paywall. And so again, we're trying to protect the value of what we do, but in the same sense, serve our community. So it's a hard and a soft wall. How's that?
Well, so it's good to get a readings. We have not interviewed your company, Southern Newspapers. You're the president of the entire group based out of Galveston. So does everybody pretty much follow the same model? Did you cut back on print cycle? Before we get into the real, about Juneteenth. So I'm assuming that is your company's philosophy. So I got to ask, and hope you don't mind, Leonard, I'm a business guy. You're a business guy. Mm-hmm. How's it going? Is reader revenue strong enough to support your newsrooms? Advertising revenue? You guys doing okay? I mean, am I allowed to ask that?
No, and I'm more than happy to share, Mike. We came out of COVID stronger than we went into COVID. We're a stronger financial company. We're performing better. Our margins are better, and which allows us to continue to invest and hold these newsrooms. I mean, when I talk to subscribers, I just straight out say, look, it was 2 days that I had to give up some of the reporting team. And to me, that's the core value of what we do. When we start lopping off valuable people and can no longer produce the best product we can, then we put ourselves at risk.
I can't agree more. I always, I've been through a lot of down economies. I'm an old guy. I'm 64. I remember Paul McCartney in a band before Wings. I got to tell you that every time there's a down economy, the strong can get stronger. And if you just, you find opportunity through the stress. I just had a meeting with our accountant. We're 1.9. We're almost double last year at this moment, and that was through. But you look at the opportunity. It's almost like I hate to be so. It refocuses people on what's important, and then change. Crisis accelerates the change.
And you look at it as an offensive opportunity, not a defensive move. You look at it and look as far down the road as you can and say, what will most likely happen? And then you go, let's get there now that we're in this window.
Because
let's accelerate and go.
It's I hate to say thins the herd as well, but it just means that those that weren't going to make it anyway, it just happens quicker. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And it compresses a marketplace. I hope that didn't seem negative. The reason we reached out to you is that incredibly beautiful piece you shared with New Yang, our editor-in-chief, and she passed on to me, on Juneteenth. It was award-winning. I'm assuming you're going to submit that. And I hope we get it. That was beautiful. Just this incredible, I want to say, can I use the word tasteful, mind-boggling? And Michael, you're right. Your shooters did an amazing job as well. Everything about that wasn't just good journalism. It was great to touch, to read.
And that was this piece here.
Yes, sir.
This piece here, the Juneteenth magazine.
Talk to me
which, and Michael, tell them a little bit about that. That was actually for the 150th anniversary a couple of years ago. And it's still live on our website, but Juneteenth, and Michael can explain this background, is ingrained in the DNA of the Daily News to the day it was read by General Granger. So Michael, give us a little history on this.
Oh, well, I can talk mostly about the history of the time I was here, but Leonard's right. Juneteenth has always, up until now, been kind of a Galveston holiday. it began in Galveston, and it was kind of a small, intimate, local thing that people celebrated as families. And but it's always been part of the city of Galveston, and it's kind of spread out to over the years to adjacent communities, and then even across the country and around the world. But it's always been kind of a low-key event, celebrated mostly by the Black community. But it's always been something, I mean, for decades and decades, that the Daily News is covered. We cover it like we cover the 4th of July or Memorial Day or Christmas or anything else. It's just one of those local holidays that's always on the news budget to cover. And so celebrating a major anniversary of the event was just something that we were going to do. So when the 150th came around, we did a magazine on it.
And so you can look back through the archives of the Daily News, Mike, and you can see for years we have published editorials calling for this to become a national holiday, or it deserves national recognition. And it just was a part of what we do here. And since the Daily News is the oldest newspaper in the state of Texas, 1852, it's actually older than Texas itself. These events were recorded on the front pages of our newspaper as they happened. And so if you look back, this is the beauty of a community newspaper. If you look backwards through time, you can see this all play out on the pages of the Galveston County Daily News. And so, Michael said it last week to me, he said, "Holy cow, this thing happened at light speed." I mean, we've been banging this drum for years, and suddenly it goes out of nowhere and becomes a national or federal holiday. So we were thrilled.
Well, the George Floyd crisis, and I think I can use the word crisis because it became on many levels. And we just did an interview with the entire team at the Star Tribune. That crisis, because imagine having reporters that have to invest in gas masks, and we're hit with rubber bullets, but it accelerated the change. I mean, I could go on and on in this, but let me ask you about your ownership then. How, with all this legacy, who is Southern Newspapers, and how long has your current owner had this brand? Give us some history.
You mean the Southern Newspapers itself?
Yeah, I mean,
Lissa Walls is the daughter of Carmish Walls. And if you know Carmish Walls, he's the man that helped establish so many newspapers and owner-operated newspapers throughout the South for the last 50 years. If you talk to Jim Boone, or you talk to Hart Hanks, or you talk to any of these small family groups, you're going to find some Walls DNA inside them. They all started out with it. So, and
the Kevin Bacon of our industry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's the Kevin. Yeah, I like. Yeah. I'm going to steal that one. That's a good one.
So how many years now has the Galveston paper been in this family?
Well, it's been in this family since the late 60s when the Hobby Airport, the Hobby family owned the newspaper for a while and then sold it to the Walls family in the late 60s. And so, that's it's coming on a half a century.
Why Galveston is the home office? Is that where the family's based? Is that or?
Well, we actually have an office in Houston, but one of the beauties of the world is I get to also publish a newspaper while I'm the president of the company, and I live here, and I love this community. I love being in this community, and we've been working from wherever longer than COVID came along, and so the ideal is we've got to get our things done, and we do. I love this island. I love this community, and I get to travel to our other properties. So Mike is the best of both worlds. I mean, to have to office on an island on the Gulf of Mexico is not a bad thing.
There are people right now, I have to bring this up. Maybe I shouldn't, but it's my show and I can do whatever the heck I want, right?
That's right.
Okay. There are people right now watching us and saying, we're discussing Juneteenth and your commitment to this holiday as the voice of that community. But there are three white people on the screen right now discussing this.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your philosophies. How some people might say, I've heard this actually in this very forum, EMP Reports, when I've discussed things about inclusion and diversity, that you are not, how should I put this? You're not a showcase of the community. You're not part of the community because you don't have the DNA of the community. Talk to me about that.
let me bring this, and I'm going to bring it to Michael. Our community editor, Angela Wilson, has played a key role in this. And Angela is a Black individual of our team, and she holds a high position with our company. And she has played a big role in keeping this at the forefront of our industry, our goals, our objectives in the news. And Michael, you want to talk about the role she plays? I mean, she's an important part of this newspaper.
Yeah, Angela's our community news editor, and she does a lot of things. She keeps our bulletin boards, and she does a column every week on entertainment and things to do. I think an analogous title might be features editor. She takes care of a lot of our feature stuff. But also to speak to that, I mean, the daily news is very connected to all the communities that we cover. And, we are part of the DNA of the community, no matter what particular face you happen to be looking at on a particular day or a particular year, because as an institution and an organization, we've been a part of this community for 180 years. And it was actually 1842 that the first edition of the Daily News came off the press.
Leonard, you said correct.
Oh, did I make a mistake? I'm sorry.
I
need more coffee.
1842. I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone that has that long of a legacy. This is quite an old. I didn't know Galveston was around that long. What Galveston was around before Texas, obviously, because it was a port city, right? I mean, it's
right.
The whole. I mean, I've been to Galveston. I was supposed to keynote the Southern newspapers there. Remember that, Leonard? The conference that got canceled because of COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
One of my favorite areas. So you would counter that argument by saying you have the best people in the best place, and you would say dollars to donuts. We are publishing the community regardless of what color you see on a screen at this moment, and that's your commitment.
I would agree with that, because if you walk in this building today and you look around, and to me, what's important is we have the right people. But since all of our employees live locally, we reflect our community. We tick. If everybody wants to have a list in a box of different types and everything from genders to preferences to whatever, we have it all here. And that's just what makes us unique, is that Michael's team lives right here in the island or on the mainland, and we're all local people. And so we reflect what this community is like, which is a very inclusive community.
Let's talk about Juneteenth going beyond. Now that, and again, I'm going to say this, I'd never, ever heard the term until maybe the last few years of my life, because it wasn't taught to me. And I am a closet historian. I have read books. I have dived into American history. And you know something? I, just like many people have said, it was not part of what I got in high school about America and all that and more. Will you, now that it's out there, what is your commitment for the future about the city of Galveston? So how you guys can make your mark? Again, looks like go ahead.
Yeah, let me underscore what you said. I've lived all over the country, and I grew up originally in the Midwest. And until I set foot in Galveston in the Daily News, I'd never heard of Juneteenth either, Mike. So it was one of those things that in certain communities, primarily the Black community across the country, they celebrated this date, but it is not something that was taught. And if you think of the celebration of Juneteenth is amazing in the fact that it took almost 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation for somebody to come to Texas and read the last order and say, everyone is free, absolute equality for everyone. And if you think historically, we would have thought when Lincoln made that proclamation that boom, it spread instantly. It didn't. It was 2 years later till the Union troops came down here. And I think, Michael, if you'll confirm this, a lot of the Union troops that came down were Black soldiers, and they were freeing those that were enslaved here in Texas. And I mean, it's remarkable to think it took 2 years for this to happen.
Yeah, there were about 20,000 Black Union troops in the occupation force that came to Galveston came to Texas. I mean, they showed up in Galveston, but they were here to occupy Texas. And I grew up in Texas, and I had never heard of Juneteenth until I came to Galveston. but it was always a part of the Galveston and in the surrounding communities in the county. It was a big deal here for a long, long time. And like I said, the Daily News always covered it just like any other major holiday. And you'd ask about the future. I mean, I think that Juneteenth is going to gain some things and it's going to lose some things now that it's a national holiday. I mean, it always was kind of a family-centered, kind of intimate, private. I mean, there were parades and things like that, but it was a very personal kind of celebration. And that's all going to change now. It's a national holiday. And I think it's going to, and I think there's good in that and maybe some bad in it too. I mean, the good is that a lot of people are going to learn an important historical lesson and also, you know, have reason to pause and consider that period of our history and where we've come since. But also, I think you're going to lose that kind of small family-oriented aspect of it, and it's going to become more like, you know, any of the other big celebrations, 4th of July or any of them. And so there's a kind of a give and take in that. I think for the city of Galveston, it's a huge opportunity. I mean, Galveston is a tourist town, and it lives and breathes by tourism. And this gives Galveston kind of the franchise on one of a dozen national holidays. It's like having some artifact of the American Revolution in your city. It's a tangible place where this holiday started. And I think that's a good thing for the city.
I think that
Mike,
also,
let me add,
yeah,
Mike, let me add, Michael and I visited last week because you asked, what are we doing going forward? We sat down and said, okay, now that this has happened and this is going to be of interest to a lot of people, not only today, but in the future, how can we serve this based on what we do? And so we're in the steps now of collecting our history of Juneteenth through our newspaper and creating a depository of this, and then reaching out to some community partners. And because there will be people who just want to learn about Juneteenth, and we want them to be able to come here to the newspaper, the record, and read it first, you know, how it was printed, how it happened. And that's something we can do that no one else can do. So that's what Michael and I are working on.
See, I think people, when they talk about news deserts or what would happen if a newspaper shuts down, it's more than when we all know that our founding fathers put us in this place to be that final check on power. I mean, a free press is necessary in a democracy. And I think everyone's behind that. But you also destroy the history of a town, the archives. I mean, I'm a believer that by studying history, we all grow. You do not whitewash history, you study it, because the human, and I hope I'm not pontificating, but again, it's my show, I'll do whatever the hell.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but the human journey is about mistakes, right?
Yes.
And growth through that. And where else do you see the history of some of these communities? Yeah, we know the big cities of that, but these towns are served by legacy brands that have been there. God, yours for so long. You'll be celebrating in my lifetime, hopefully my lifetime, a 200-year anniversary. Think about it. And that's amazing. Gentlemen, with your permission, may I share on E&P every page of that wonderful magazine? Is that okay with you? For everyone?
Absolutely. We would be proud. We'd be proud.
It will be there for our audience to see, and I'm going to keep it there forever. I mean, it'll be there to always see. If anyone wants to visit the website, where, Leonard, can they find it? Where is it?
galvnews.com. And if they would like to just search around, they can buy a day pass if there's stuff they want to read that's behind the wall. But the special sections and the magazines that they'll see there are free to access.
galvnews.com. Yep. Michael, your email address, if anybody on the editorial team wants to just kind of share some ideas with you or learn a little bit more, how do they get a hold of you?
It's michael.smith, just the ordinary spelling of all of that, at galvnews.com.
Leonard, yours, if we don't mind. What is it, Leonard?
Well, both of mine are unusual. So Leonard, Leonard.Woolsey, WOOLSEY at galvnews.com.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your valuable time. E&P appreciates that. Moreover, we appreciate Galveston. And I think there's a city that truly shows inclusion and celebrated this holiday locally. And now, man, think about it. The national attention you got in almost, you said it, in just light years. It happened so quickly. It's a great town. Please head down there. And yes, you really do have good barbecue in Galveston. I've been there, and great seafood too. I mean, do you eat the head when you eat the crawfish? Or I just don't know. What is your opinion?
No.
You're not one of those. Okay.
No, I'm not one of those. Michael, I don't know about you, but I'm not that guy.
I'm not a big fan of crawfish, to be honest with you. I prefer the shrimp.
There you go. Gulf shrimp. You guys have a wonderful day. Thanks so much and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you. Thanks for what you do.